Good evening, welcome to another episode of On the Couch. Tonight we're chatting with Les Henley. Les, it's great to have you with us. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here, thank you.
Now mate, you didn't always live in Australia?
No, I was born in England, in a Midlands town called Leicester. I was actually born in one of the outer suburbs, or I was born in Leicester Royal Infirmary, but we lived in one of the outer suburbs, a place called Ledbury Green, which was named for a grassy area that the road that we were on fronted that green.
So how long did you live in the UK?
We left in the beginning of October in 1965. I was born in 55 and turned 10 at the end of October. So I was the first one in the family to have a birthday here in Australia.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And what are your memories of life in England?
I will say that in now 55 years I've never been back. One of the reasons was that as youngsters, Mum and Dad used to take us camping for 2 weeks every year, and we go to a different part of England. And so I have my own memories of England and the areas that we saw, as well as the area that I grew up in. And I've never wanted to overwrite those with seeing it not as I remember it.
Yeah, yep.
So I've never been back, but I have memories of so many places, snippets of memories of so many places because of those camping trips.
Yep.
So we did some of the East Coast, some of the South Coast, some of the West Coast. I do remember one particular camping trip into Wales. We were staying near Carnarvon Castle, and I remember. Why we did it, I don't know, but Mum organised some pieces of string and we were using chocolate buttons to go crabbing around the rocks.
Right.
So, yeah, little things like that. When you look back, you think, well, that was stupid, but it was memorable.
Yeah,
It was fun at the time. We didn't know any different.
Yeah, no, very cool. Where'd you settle when you came to Australia?
One of Mum's younger brothers was already here. Living in Blacktown with his family, and we first of all landed with them. Stayed in Blacktown for about 9 months until we got rental accommodation at Rooty Hill. I'd been in high school for not quite 12 months, and we relocated. We got housing commission housing up in Lethbridge Park. Yep. Went to year 10, did my what was then the school certificate, and then left. Mum and Dad were never well off, never had a lot of resources. Whilst I was told in my younger years that I was capable of doing things like medicine or law, Mum and Dad didn't have the resources to be able to send us to uni. So both my older brother and I finished at year 10 and then went on and did an apprenticeship. We both did fitting and machining, as it turns out. But my older brother continued to do that or work in that aspect for the remainder of his working life. Yep. Where I, over a number of years, graduated into middle management and then into self-employment.
So did you enjoy life on the tools?
Yes and no. I mean, I've always been a bit of a problem solver. I like jigsaw puzzles. I like those puzzle-type gifts, yep. The things that take a bit of working out. I've always enjoyed that sort of stuff. So the aspect of fitting and machining I enjoyed was the diagnostics, working out what the problem was and what needed to happen to make it fixed. I was never so keen on being covered in grease and coolants and those sorts of things. And I remember one particular day, I was arms deep through a set of rollers trying to do some repairs, but not below the rollers, inside a large machine, absolutely covered in rolling. It was a water-based coolant oil. Pieces of wire that were sharp as needles all over the place, so getting pricked. And I'm thinking, I think I was in my mid-20s at the time, and I'm thinking, I don't want to be doing this for the rest of my life. Which I think that was the motivation then for me to start looking for doing other things. Yep. I became a leading hand shortly after that. Was leading hand for 7 years while I learned the entirety of one part of the aluminium factory I was then working in, and then took a supervisor's role, 9 months as a supervisor, and then I was promoted to a superintendent's role. And I did 3 different superintendent's roles, each one being made redundant as I streamlined the processes and devolved divulge the knowledge, and that was something that set me up for the rest of my working life.
Right.
It was during that time that I realised that I didn't want to be doing the same thing constantly for a lot of years, end on end, and I found that I was more valuable to an organisation, and I think it's worked out that way as well in terms of my church life. More valuable if I was prepared to work at streamlining or devolving knowledge and systems and that sort of stuff, so that people with less skills could carry on the work, and that would free me up to do other stuff.
Yep.
And it was at that point where I was starting to think, well, in Australia we need to do it better. And the stuff that during those last couple of roles, I'd gone to uni as a mature student, enrolled in my late 20s and finished in my early 30s, doing an employment relations degree. Mm-hmm. And I thought at that stage I can continue working in one organisation and influencing a small number of people, or I can look for opportunities to influence a wider group. So left full-time employment and went self-employed for about 7 years.
Yep. So consulting with different companies?
Consulting to different companies based on the things that I'd learned both in my degree and in the experience I'd had in the aluminium factory. And successfully consulting for about 7 years, and interspersed with that was a lot of teaching, combination of teaching in the classroom and workplace on behalf of TAFE, mm-hmm. All on subcontract, and also some part-time tutoring at university in my own subject area. And so in some semesters I might have 3 classes at TAFE and 3 classes at uni. Mm-hmm. So if you average 30 students by class, but per class, that's a lot of minds that I've had input to for improving how Australia does work. Yep. And during that 7 years was when I slipped into focusing more and more on health and safety.
And so what drove you? Was it just here's a field and here's an opportunity, or was it?
No, I sort of slipped into health and safety as a result of the demand during my consulting years, but I'd also realised that during my time on the tools and in management within the factory that there'd been a number of fatalities. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that came to me is that we need to do it better and stop hurting people in workplaces. And so by this time as well, I'd been a Christian for quite a few years. And the concept of health and safety really gelled with who I am as a Christian, because for me, health and safety is about teaching employees to love one another, mm-hmm. so they don't get hurt, and teaching employers to love their employees by not putting demands on them that cause them to be hurt. Yep. That's essentially what drives me to keep doing health and safety for so long, despite the fact there are times when I think I'm banging my head against the wall.
So your Christian faith, I mean, I've always seen that with you in the life of the church, mm-hmm. that you're always looking for people to love, not gravitating to the sexy popular people, but those who are more around the fringe.
Yeah, I think there are probably two aspects of my life as a human being that have contributed to who I am in that respect. First, I was born with a congenital deformity of the right foot, mm-hmm. and as a toddler had to go into hospital before school, had to go into hospital and have corrective surgery on that ankle. And in the process of recovery, I was very much isolated. Right. So in the hospital during the recovery period, I had to remain on my bed when other kids got together on the floor. So I was on the fringe. Yep. And then coming to Australia as essentially a 10-year-old boy, and the people refer to it as discrimination. It was just the way people were. I think the way people are. We identify the differences rather than focusing on the things that unify us, and we see that in with church splits and stuff like that. We need to focus on the things that unify us. But I experienced that being made fun of because of an accent. Mm-hmm. And I learned fairly quickly to modify the way I spoke at school, which irritated Mum and Dad when I came home and did it. But even today, when I get round Mum, my Pommy accent, what's left of it, my Pommy accent still comes back.
So you can drop into a bit of that Midlands voice.
Talk the way my mum and dad always did, and, and that sort of stuff.
Did your Christian faith start in the UK?
I wouldn't say my Christian faith started in the UK. My experience of Christianity started in the UK. Mum and Dad were never churchgoers. Dad used to refer to himself as a four-wheel churchgoer. Christmas, Easter, weddings and funerals. Neither Mum or Dad were churchgoers as such, but Mum had, I only found out recently, Mum had grown up being expected to go to Sunday school, and so she put that on us as well.
Right. And so you kids all went to Sunday school?
Well, I only have one memory of a Sunday school experience. There were some men who we referred to as brothers, used to wear the long black cassock, would come to our local primary school on a Sunday, and there were some ladies amongst it as well. And I have this one memory of being taught the lesson of the Road to Emmaus, where the lady who was teaching my age group used a sandbox and some of those wooden dolly pegs to represent the men on the walk to Emmaus.
Right.
And for some reason that story has always stuck in my head.
So you've remembered
I've remembered
the story?
that story of the walk to Emmaus ever since those very early years.
Right. But that's sort of your memory of church?
That's the only memory I would have of church, apart from I did join the St Luke's Leicester Church Choir, and I was in that long enough to attend and perform at one wedding and was paid sixpence, and we wore the black dress and the white surplice and the rough collar. Yep. And I thought it was all pretty special at the time. But the first practice following that, it was identified that I couldn't carry a tune, so I was asked not to come back. So on one level, I think that was a little bit devastating for me as a little bloke.
You can always say that you were, you've sung professionally. You were paid.
Well, I was paid to perform. I was paid sixpence. Yeah.
So from the lucrative sixpence you got from performing at the wedding, when you went to the corner shop, what would that have got you?
Oh, you're talking a long time ago now.
What would you have been buying with it?
Oh, lollies, sweets as we call them.
Now, mate, we've wandered off track. We were started on your Christian walk. We're now off to you as a professional singer. So your Christian faith really didn't boom until you hit Australia.
No, similar thing happened. I mean, nothing in terms of when we lived at Blacktown for 9 months, and then nothing at Rooty Hill. But then when we moved in at Lethbridge Park, my older brother started walking down to Wayland, St James Wayland, for Sunday school on a Sunday morning. I was always too lazy. I liked my bed on the weekends. But then a chap by the name of John Wise, a rector, moved into a house down the road in the same street as us. There was no church in Lethbridge Park at the time, but he started a church service in his lounge room, and they put up a marquee in the backyard where kids would go to Sunday school. I was too old for the Sunday school they had going, so if I was going to stay, I had to sit in the service, in the lounge room. And I've always thanked John Wise that what I learned under his teaching was the self-discipline of physical self-discipline of sitting in a service, because he required us young people to sit in the front row, right under his eyes.
Keep you all in order.
Yeah, and John Wise moved on, and a guy by the name of John Merriment took his place. John Merriment was instrumental in getting the church built, the building built, which then became All Saints Tregear. It's now the Indigenous Church on Ellsworth Drive opposite the Tregear High School. But I started going to that church under John's leadership, John Merriment's leadership, got involved in youth group, became a junior youth leader, got married from that church. So I met my wife at youth group, my wife Sue, who a few people from church know, but not a lot. Sue unfortunately doesn't share my faith yet. So we got married from there, and we moved away, and I had a break. By the time I was 16, under John Merriment's leadership, I had given my head to Christ.
Right.
I'd worked out from what I'd been taught and what I'd done of my own research that Christianity was the only Christ as the one God, Christ as a saviour of the world was the only thing that really works, only thing that makes sense to me. There's no logic in any of the other positions. And so I'd given my head to Christ by the time I was 16, but it didn't really affect the way I was living my life. Got married, moved away, and as we moved away, my wife and I didn't have individual transport, and there was no church local to us, and so for a period of time I fell away from the church until we eventually bought the house in Cambridge Gardens. We'd been there for a couple of years, and our relationship was starting to get really, really rocky, and something happened one night, and my first experience of God literally speaking to me, in the midst of a deep argument with my wife, I heard God say, "Stop." And he called me out of the house, and I left, and I was gone for several hours. I actually went to the church at Cambridge Park, hoping it would be open so I could sit inside and talk to God. It was locked, so I sat on the back step and spent 2 hours communing with God. And it was during that time that I realised that life wasn't working my way. I say at 16 I gave my head to God. I was about 27. God took my heart.
Yeah.
And that was when my life changed.
Yeah. I mean, one of my first great memories is your relationship with Danny.
Yep.
Danny McNamara.
Yep.
Danny had lots of issues.
Yep.
I think quite literally a couple of run-ins with cars, amongst other things.
Cars and motorbikes. Yep.
Yeah. You've had a great passion for the lost, not just lost not knowing Christ, but just
people on the fringe.
Relationally, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, coming back to what I was saying about being in hospital and then being an immigrant, and my experiences of trying to come into an established culture, if you like, or an established group, felt myself living on the edge a number of times. Being new in a primary school, coming from England to Australia, being new into high school, trying to establish yourself as a member of a group. We all see the TV programs of the different groups of young people in the high school and how they orientate to their passions. I never ever fitted with any of them. I could mingle with all of them. I could mingle with the jocks, I could mingle with the nerds, I could mingle with the brainiacs, but I never ever felt like I was one of any of them.
Yeah.
So I think that gave me a sense of looking out for people. I used to think, up until fairly recently, I used to think that people on the fringe were drawn to me. It's actually, I've learned since that's the other way around. I'm drawn to people on the fringe with a desire to help them integrate, as nobody helped me in all of those situations. And Danny was my first experience. It had happened once in a work situation. There was a chap who was different, and I gravitated towards him, and we became friends. But Danny was my first experience in the church context. Cyril Kelly, another one, and through my connection with Danny, I think it was during your time. There was a lady from who was then living in Emu Plains who contacted for me who was having trouble with her teenage son, and I got involved with him and his mum for a period of time. I did bump into her a couple of years ago, and she was quite pleased. She was pleased to see me, to let me know that he had grown. And she put a lot of it down to my having been involved with him. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So for me, it's a pleasure to see people grow, but it's more a blessing when you experience the gratitude from people who don't get that in very many places. I learned a long time ago during my involvement with Fusion that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, but most of us talk twice as much as we listen.
Yep.
I've learned to listen and take the time. I mentioned Seth Kelly. One of the difficulties he always had was I don't think he had been listened to very much in his younger life, and if anybody had listened to him, they hadn't heard what he had to say.
Yeah.
And so his attitude when he saw an opportunity to speak, it would come out so fast that people couldn't understand it anyway. And so for me, I took great delight in encouraging Seth to take a breath and take it slowly.
Yeah.
I want to listen to what you've got to say. What you've got to say is important. And as a result, he blossomed and our friendship blossomed over several years.
Now, mate, this gravitating towards those on the fringes, I understand you did something similar with your first car. You gravitated to a car type that was on the fringes.
Yeah, I hadn't got my licence yet, but I was in the process of, I think I'd got my hours, so I was in the process of going for my licence and looking for a suitable car. And Dad was of the ilk that he always maintained his own vehicles, and he thought it would be great learning exercise for me to buy one to do up. Mm-hmm. And when we looked around, about the only thing I could afford on an apprentice's wages was a Simca, S-I-M-C-A.
A SIM card that you put in your phone?
No, Simca, S-I-M-C-A. It was a French designed and built vehicle, similar in shape and size to the old Hillman Minx, and on the market round about the same time. And in fact, Hillman eventually purchased Simca, took it over, and Simca was no longer on the market. But so
youngsters like me have never heard of it.
That's it. That's it. Now the difficulty in doing that one up was that there were so few spare parts around. Even at the wreckers, there were very few Simcas at the wreckers, and I struggled. Wasn't able eventually to find an exhaust system for it. It was rusted out, and so I never ever actually got that one on the road.
So your first car is a car that virtually no one's ever heard of.
Yep.
And the road never got to experience. Biggest regret?
Don't see a lot of value in regrets. There have been things in my life that at the time I thought it would be good to do, but we didn't. I say we, my wife and I, depending what it was, didn't do. I look back and I think probably for the best. So I don't see a lot of value in regretting what hasn't happened or things I've done that didn't work out right. Better to learn from those experiences and move forward. So I'm not one for regrets.
Always problem solving.
Yeah, always problem solving. There's always another problem to solve.
Yeah. Now, you have 3 favourite verses.
It's about, I think it's 5 or 6. I was looking at this last Monday, Monday of last week actually, with Anne South. Starts with 2 Timothy 3:16. All scripture is God-breathed and useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting and training in righteousness. 17, so that the man of God can be built up for every good works. Okay, if all of scripture is God-breathed, what is it that God wants me to learn from that? And we go through, sometimes I get the sequence mixed up, but essentially, love God with all your heart, soul, strength and mind, love your neighbour as you love yourself. That feeds in for my desire for people on the fringe, desire to serve people on the fringe. Okay, if I'm going to love my neighbour, what is it that they need most? And that is Matthew 28:16 and forwards. Jesus commanded his disciples to go and make disciples, baptising in the name of the Father, the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching their disciples to obey everything he taught them. So if I'm going to love my neighbour, I'm going to introduce them to Jesus with a view, hopefully, that they'll come to know Jesus personally. And in knowing them, then I can help them, draw them along the path that God has had me on through so many other people's inputs. Okay, if they come to Christ, what's next? 2 Chronicles 7:14. That one's easy to remember because 2 7s are 14.
Right.
Nice. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and seek my face and pray, I'll heal their land. I'll hear from heaven and heal their land. And that's, if you like, the reconciliation process. So if I introduce them to Jesus, Matthew 28:16, and they want to know Jesus more, then I take them through the confessional prayer, and then it's a matter of Matthew.
What do you mean by confessional prayer?
Well, they're confessing the need for Christ.
Yep.
Confessing that I am a sinner and I need Christ to get me right with God.
Yep.
Which is 2 Chronicles 7:14, basically. Then what's the next thing? Matthew 6:33. which is the summary of Jesus speaking about the birds of the air and the lilies of the field. God cares for them. He'll give you, so Matthew 6:33, seek first God's kingdom and his righteousness.
Yep.
And he'll give you everything you need anyway. And okay, what does it mean to seek God's kingdom and his righteousness? Be obedient, to follow that cycle.
Yep. Yep.
And so my life has been built around those since I came to that realisation of that creed. I call it my creed.
So they're just bits and pieces and particular verses you've picked up over time, not a tract or an outline that someone taught you. It's just
it's just what I've learned over the years that has at key points, each one has been significant in my own walk, and God has turned the lights on for me to understand. Okay, it's good for me, but it's also good for other people to hear these things if they're willing to listen.
Yeah.
And so I've put them together, if you like, as a bit of a creed.
As your own little way of explaining things.
Yeah.
And so no real regrets. Do you have, are you the sort that has hopes and dreams for the future? Or
No, I often, I've referred before about people being different. I often look at people who have these hopes, dreams, goals, and establish 5-year and 10-year plans and think, I've never been one for doing that. It's almost like I'm waiting for God to lead me wherever he wants to take me. I'll experience whatever he wants to put in front of me. I know that he has a plan for my life, and I'll just keep moving so that he can take me where he wants me to go.
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't really feel like the sort that waits. So you're not just sitting around.
No. Another lesson I learned years ago, or allegory. A ship at sea has a tiny rudder, but if it's stationary in the sea, it doesn't matter where the captain turns the helm, the ship won't go anywhere. But if the ship is moving, the captain turns the helm, he can direct the ship. And I've always felt that I need to be moving so that God can direct where I go.
Yeah. Which again, those 5 verses you took us through, it's constantly moving, but God can bring people into life or
in terms of people that I've known over the years that I've been a Christian, different people are because I have that as a cycle of life. I've got different people in my life who are at different stages within that cycle, and my aim is to keep drawing them through and get them doing the same thing for other people. So I lead 2 Bible study groups, and my greatest dream for them is that they will catch that vision and become similar disciplers. And Rod Redcliffe is one who stands out in my mind as one who's now discipling his granddaughter, and I think it's absolutely magic.
Yeah, fantastic. And now you were saying to me earlier tonight, you've just celebrated 45 years of marriage with Sue.
Yep.
Congratulations, Sue. Well done for making it that far.
For putting up with me for those years.
What's the best thing of being married to Sue?
For me, she's been a wife, a mother, and a grandmother who has always put family first. She was instrumental in how our children grew and became adults in their own right. I don't say I haven't contributed, but she's been the primary mover in that aspect. She's been the one that has worked at keeping her siblings connected with each other, and she absolutely adores her grandkids. And this COVID stuff is causing havoc with our youngest granddaughter in Brisbane.
Yeah.
She hasn't seen her since last December, and we missed her first birthday in April this year. So.
And you almost got to see her.
We almost got to see her this
weekend. This
weekend just gone, but with Palachek closing the border Saturday night,
just missed out.
So we're looking now for the first opportunity that the borders are open. Depending on where Sue said she will simply she'll be off whether I can go with her or not.
Yeah, mate, it's been a pleasure having you on the couch and roaming through various aspects of your life. You're a wonderful blessing to us. You've blessed many in so many ways over the years, and so thank you for sharing with us this evening.
It's been my pleasure. I think I've had the bigger blessings though. In all those years, I think Danny and Sess and the blessings that they were to me. They say it's more blessed to give than to receive, and I certainly see that. I get far more returns from giving than I do from receiving.
May have even been someone a bit more significant than just they said those things.
Yeah.
Might be part of what God teaches us.
Yeah.
But brother, keep serving, and may God continue to bless and strengthen you.
Definitely.
Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
Thanks everyone for joining us, and we look forward to continuing to bring characters from church to your lounge room. That you can get to know them and hear more and more about how God has been working in our lives and growing us in Him. Thanks for joining us.